Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the chairman rise for a question?
Will the delegate yield for a question?
Yes, sir, I'll yield.
The delegate yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 2 years ago, this body passed legislation that finally approved in-state tuition and financial aid equity for undocumented students who grew up in Virginia and graduated from our schools. My question is this, and it's an important one because for the last 48 hours, numerous organizations, immigrant rights groups, universities, policy shops across the state have been asking this question. If this budget amendment is passed, can you confirm that undocumented students who qualify for state financial assistance programs under Code of Virginia, Section 23.1-505.1, will still have full access to state financial assistance and grants at the same level expected absent this budget amendment?
Mr. Speaker, the answer to that is they would not be granted the in-state tuition, but they would have access to the $150 million of financial aid that are available to all students. This is an extra amount of money that's going to the historical black colleges and universities.
Follow-up question, Mr. Speaker.
Will the delegate yield for a question?
I yield.
Delegate yields.
Just two quick questions, Mr. Speaker. Did you just say that they would not be eligible for in-state tuition?
I would encourage the delegate to direct his remarks to the chair.
Mr. Speaker, did the chairman just say that with this amendment they would not be eligible for in-state tuition?
I will answer the gentleman. That is a very good catch. You are right. They would still be eligible for in-state tuition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One final question, Mr. Speaker.
Will the delegate yield?
Yes, sir, I'll yield.
Delegate yields.
Thank you. As was mentioned earlier, the first year of the biennial budget increases financial aid by approximately $30 million. And then the second year increases at approximately $125 million. This is great, but of all the 35 governor's amendments, number 8 is the only amendment with an embedded pay for. If the additional funding is there already with the approximately $150 million in financial aid resources, why is there a need to take money specifically designated for undocumented student populations away in order from those folks, and those students, in order to support HBCUs? I mean, why was this necessary? Why insist on forcing a zero-sum game?
This was a recommendation by the governor, and I assume that the governor decided it was just a choice of his, that he thought that if he's going to preference someone, he would rather preference the historical black colleges and universities as opposed to the DACA.
Mr. Speaker, speaking to the amendment at the appropriate time.
Delegate has the floor.
So I'm flabbergasted by what was just said. And there's a phone going off. This body accomplished something extraordinary when we passed the DREAM Act and Equity and Financial Aid Act. We gave children hope. We have to remember that the vast majority of students who benefit from these policies are kids who have largely known no home but the United States, and these kids are American in every way but documentation. Unfortunately, it's clear that the governor doesn't get it. The governor's amendment purports to remove financial aid for students who are undocumented and have limited options to qualify for federal and scholarship assistance, while additional support for HBCU financial assistance is needed. What the governor is doing is unnecessarily pitting two high-need student groups against each other. And the chairman just admitted it. Here's the thing. According to our reading, the statutes creating in-state tuition and financial aid equity still remain untouched, and undocumented students still remain eligible for financial aid. They'll simply access the larger pot of financial aid funding provided by Governor Northam, like everyone else. That being said, the administration may still interpret this new amendment number 8 language the opposite of what we think is the clear reading. We are not comfortable letting it go based on unclear assurances and nothing on the record. Also, more importantly, it is inappropriate to pit two high-need groups of students against each other, especially when it's completely unnecessary. And the fact that it was just said on the floor that that was a decision made by the governor and a choice made by him, the governor doesn't get it. If Governor Northam included approximately $150, $160 million more in financial aid funding in the budget, and it is still in this version of the enrolled bill, why is it necessary to create an embedded pay-for and say that we have to take money from high-need undocumented immigrant children in order to fund high-need students at two prominent HBCUs? Simply put, Mr. Speaker, the language in the enrolled bill supports legislation that passed 2 years ago in this body. It is necessary to ensure that the legislation we passed works for students, their families, and by extension, the larger Virginia economy. This governor's amendment is at best unnecessary, and at its worst, a misguided attempt to pit communities against each other. And it's not like we don't see it. It's not like we don't see it. And you just said it. I urge my colleagues to vote no on the governor's Amendment 8 because it's not who Virginians are.
The delegate from Hampton, Delegate Cordova.